wanted to do a little video about if you know somebody who is chronically ill or is just struggling in life um, and maybe on a fixed income, maybe the person doesn't even have a bed, they're sleeping on the floor. Maybe that person has moved into a place um, that doesn't it's not up to code, not up to federal code, not up to state code, and there's no accountability for their place to be habitable for humans really, much less somebody who's dealing with chronic illness. So if you have a friend who you know can't afford the medical care that they need, they can't even afford the furniture they need, they can't afford the rent that they need to have a habitable place. Um, and when somebody doesn't have money, they don't really have leverage or family or friends, really, because who wants to be around all of that? So if you have a friend who's like that, and let's say you're wealthy or you're you've got you know um, things like you've got security or whatever, like it's better form to uh, not really uh, expect the person that's your friend who doesn't have money for rent, doesn't have money for relocation, doesn't have money for medical care, doesn't have money to even move, doesn't have money for food, doesn't have money for furniture, okay? Like if you're rich basically and you keep on complaining about having to eat the leftovers in your fridge, if you keep complaining about how you don't eat right and you can afford not only afford good food, you can afford to have good food delivered to your house. If you're wealthy and you have a chronic illness and you won't do anything about it, but you're going to complain about it, I recommend if you want to be considerate to your friend who is chronically ill and desperately poor, don't complain and don't keep complaining about your situation and don't keep almost expecting the person who's disabled and poor and on the verge of homelessness to help you if you're a rich person, honestly. If it's clear that you're wealthy and that you're making significant donations, but you won't even take care of yourself. Like it's really rude. And something else that I find is whenever I'm in a situation, like I go to different support groups, I'll go to just whatever kind of self improvement group, and there'll be people who are actually fatalistic. They're just using the information of the support group as like a stopgap, but not really as a true solution. Like something that I find when I'm discussing challenges, people are talking about how there's no other way. Like this is just how it is. That housing is impossible and traffic is impossible and people are impossible and we're just kind of resigned to this living hell, basically, of just like um, people being inept and people being inconsiderate. And uh, and so it becomes this fatalistic thing. And I've seen this time and time again. Like I've done different types of support groups, whether it's cognitive behavioral types of retraining or new agey kind of stuff, which I consider 12 step to be new agey, and even in Christianity. Like there's some people who call themselves Christians that also are fatalistic, and it's like I don't want to be part of a death cult. I don't want to just be one of those people that's just waiting to die, as if like that's some sort of martyr, noble martyrdom. I want to be around people who, if you're scrappy and you've got limited resources, but you're going to eat your green vegetables if you can afford them. You're going to drink water. You're going to try to filter your water. You know, um, I don't want to be friends with people who are kind of deliberately destructive and this um, like superficial, like on the surface it looks like they're not, like it's just like, especially when like, and when I'm describing the person who can't afford furniture, who can't afford rent, who can't afford to travel, who can't afford the medical care, who can't afford to move, um, like that's me. I'm talking about me. And it's weird because when you're somebody who's in such a desperate situation, you have to be wary of um, people who are loan shark, um, who help you, but they kind of think they own you after they've helped you. They want a lot of your time. They want you to spend hours and hours and hours and hours listening to them, and they think that because they've heard your story, they get hours and hours and hours of their story, of their like you're babysitting them, and it's very difficult because uh, so you gotta watch out for the really obvious uh, predators, and then then there's this other kind of like dysfunctional thing that occurs, that it's like it's more, it seems, um, it's just more unexpected, and the people seem benign, and it's like they'll talk a talk, but not, I guess, not really mean it. So, um, yeah, I just wanted to put that out there to other people who are dealing with significant budget limitations, health limitations, resource limitations, family, energy. If you've got limitations, um, make sure you're interacting with people who have some common sense, who know that you deserve to have clean air in your home, in your wherever you are. If you're in the hospital, you deserve clean air. You deserve habitable temperature. Not where you're cooking in 90-degree temperatures all the time, like where I'm at right now. Um, where you deserve to not be surrounded by constant noise pollution of some sort of weird whatever motors going on, and um, like you need to be around people who have some common sense. And I don't know if it's 2019 and people have lost that common sense, because I don't understand how everybody's functioning, like how everybody's like still eating a somewhat standard American diet, and yet they're still zipping around and doing things, because I'm like I'm eating my vegetables and I'm taking my supplements and I'm barely able to wake up. I'm barely able to climb up off the floor, to start my day. I mean, it's like climbing up off the floor is like a huge workout. Brushing my hair, what hassle. Um, and I just think like if we're around people who supposedly are helping us, but then they're telling us, oh, well, there's no hope, you just have to accept that you're going to be breathing poisonous air and being in unhealthy temperatures, and you're going to be treated this way, and that's just how it is. Like, I don't think, like, avoid those people. Limit your contact with those people and change your situation, because I do believe, even though I'm looking at the news. I'm looking at evaluations of different cities, and everything pretty much is like, it's the end of the world. Like, homeless people everywhere, and and cities are inhumane, you know, and that's goes for like it seems like New York and San Francisco and Oregon, Portland, Oregon. Like those places are generally pretty nice places in my experience. Even you know for like financially challenged people. So I'm trying to figure out if it's just you know like transplants, like people who've moved there from somewhere else that are complaining about those cities, or if it's you know just news stories being overblown. But my point is that there has to be people with common sense somewhere in you know, and I do feel that in like it's better to like major cities. I feel like major cities are more competitive economically. They have the benefit of multiple minds. You know, like I forget the cliche, but you know, two brains are better than one. And when you're in a provincial state or city, which I consider I'm in Missoula, Montana, but it seems like when you're in what's like a multi generational American, actually not just American, just a multi generational national location. There's going to be this clicky thing, this kind of almost it's like a racist or aristocracy. Actually, we could call it an aristocracy. So there's an aristocracy in Montana. You know, you get to brag if you're like a third generation Montanan or a fourth generation Montanan. People will brag as if it's something like I've never met a third generation New Yorker. They're probably there, but I've never met one. I've never met like a third generation San Franciscan or Oregonian. Never. but but there's like this deep pride, and there's like this power, there's this leverage. You matter if you're a third generation Montanan. If you're just here from somewhere else, if you're a tourist come to spend money, they like you, you know, they like your temporary presence, but they don't want people to relocate. And I know they built all these new developments and condos, and you know $300,000 properties, apartments in those condos. So you know they like those rich people to come, you know, and boost the economy during the summer or whatever. But and I know this place, I know Missoula has expanded, but I don't know. There's just something still kind of bizarre and difficult and discouraging and kind of soul killing, you know. And I like you know the conventional corporate workplace is kind of soul killing, but uh, the community here I would say is soul killing, especially if you're over 30 and you're a female and you're single and you're not wealthy. Like inland multi-generational uh, cities are not, I would not recommend that. And I suspect that's similar in the South as well. Maybe even in Idaho, I'm not sure. So I think even though it's 2019 and there's like, it looks like there's this economic difficulty, collapse, you know, global, I mean, I feel like the weather changes have to do with biblical stuff. I don't think it's our carbon footprint. And to see all the progressive liberals cutting me off when I'm trying to cross the street, it's clear that even though they'll talk about global warming, they're certainly not facilitating this person without a car. They're not making it possible for me to not have a car, you know, they're not making it possible for me to exist across the street here in Missoula. But anyway, I got sidetracked there. But so I think though for single women on a budget who are over 35, you want to relocate to cosmopolitan locations where there's diversity, where there's people from other countries, where there's people from other cities. Because when you come to a place where everybody already has all their friends from when they were a kid, and they've been here for 3 generations. You're just like this nuisance. You're just this hassle. I mean, unless you have a lot of money, then they'll like you, or unless you know for as long as the wife or husband wants you, the family will include you because they kind of have to. But I really think that somebody's family can't be your whole social structure, and there's just this mentality. So I think if you're relocating and you're an older single woman on a budget, and I mean by older, I mean like over 30, um, I would not move to, I would not relocate to places like Montana. I don't know about like Wyoming or Boise, um, but I would say Montana is they love being LGBT friendly. They love talking about liberal politics. They love Bernie Sanders, Obama, Hillary. They'll make it very clear how concerned they are about global warming. Okay, so they've got all that covered. Very, very pro-choice. So that's my experience at Montana, and I know a lot of liberals will be like, they think everybody in Montana is shooting black people, and it's weird because I've never seen irresponsible um, gun use. I've seen tons of irresponsible vehicular abuse, like where I'm being bullied when I'm trying to cross the street at my light. Um, so the people in Montana are talking a good talk. They're talking the liberal progressive talk, uh, which is kind of deceptive when you're first here. But there's this, like, the longer you're here, the deeper you get to know people in Missoula, and the more calcified and xenophobic. I think xenophobic is, they're clannish, and and they're very materialistic, so they want a lot of money. They want to be able to travel around, to get out of town every weekend, and to have the nicest car, and to have you know all this, nice everything nice, getting your makeup done and getting your like fancy appliances at home, and keeping up with the Joneses. So they really want to keep up with. I mean, there's a better quality of life here. Um, like when you're in San Francisco, people don't have a car. New York, people don't have a car. Even Portland, not everybody has a car, and they certainly don't have as much like physical space, in their apartments. So they don't have a whole lot of stuff. And in the houses that people do buy, and so they install whatever washer, blah blah blah. They don't have a lot of it. But here, people, there's it's weird because it's like um, it's almost like a richer, like, people demand more. They've got to have everything here. Um, Whereas when you're in a major city, people will be like, okay, I'm gonna buy a car, so we'll put all the money into the car, or they'll put all the money into the home. Here, they gotta have money for the car. They've got to have money for the home. They got to have money for the kids. They got to have money for their hair. They got to have money for their appliances. They got to have money for their hobby. They got to have money for their second hobby. So there's all this money that they've got to have, and and while I don't know anything really other than conjecture that somebody else said, like, what do you do? What do you do when you need a lot of money and there's not a lot of opportunities, and you're a respectable, responsible, you kept up appearances. What do you do when you're in a small country? It's a border state between Canada. You're in the middle of the state. Um, who knows? But what I also do observe, and that there's documentation, is that I mean, rents are crazy, and property managers do not take care of rentals. So real estate is a real lucrative, unregulated uh, situation, and tenants are really at the mercy of landlords, and landlords know it, and so does HUD, so does human rights, so does the housing authority. Like, even the housing authority is a culprit in negligence towards tenants. At least that's what I have observed with a friend of mine. So I just, so I guess there's a lot of things I'm saying in this, and maybe I know it's a long video, but I think if you're a single woman, limited budget, older, stay in a city. And I know cities are, you know, very difficult, and um, there's a lot of problems, but I don't think relocating to remote locations, like, this has been the worst place I've moved to, and you would never know it. It's such a beautiful place, but the mentality here is the worst mentality. And I gotta say, I've spent a summer in Philadelphia, and people are angry there, and ready for a fight there. When you're just even walking away from them, and from behind, they got a problem. I mean, that was a horrible city, in my opinion. Um, I moved into a place that had piles and piles of mouse poop in my room. I mean, like, inches of mouse poop, and throughout the apartment. And and I paid $450 for that. Uh, so, um, I know what a bad situation is, and uh, I think, like, moving inland to provincial, multi-generational, where there's multi-generational pride, and I think, like, the South might also be, one to avoid. If there's just this chip on their shoulder about um, the aristocracy, the generational aristocracy that's been here. Whereas, in major cities, it's people, everybody's from somewhere else, and they can't pull this generational aristocracy thing, because they won't have any friends. Uh, and so people grow, they expand their mind, and they're just like nicer people. Whereas when you're in your little bubble of aristocracy, which is what happens here in Montana, it's challenging. So, anyways, thanks for watching, and God bless.